Lend me your ears for a few moments. D.W. Griffith didn't just make a movie in 1915 with The Birth of a Nation. He built a blueprint for mass psychological conditioning. Before this released, motion pictures were mostly cheap Nickelodeon novelties, short visual gags, brief carnival attractions, sideshow novelties. Griffith proved that moving images on a screen could re-engineer national memory, manipulate deep emotional instincts, and directly drive political reality. Cinema instantly stopped being mere visual entertainment. It became a mechanism of soft power governance, a visual pipeline feeding straight into the public psyche. To grasp how this worked, you have to look at what the country was going through in 1915. America was rapidly urbanizing, absorbing millions of new immigrants, and struggling with deep regional fractures 50 years after the Civil War. Public opinion was fragmented. Power elites desperately needed a unifying cultural medium that could communicate across language barriers and educational divides. Film did that instantly. Silent images bypassed intellectual deliberation and hit raw emotion directly. Griffith realized that if you controlled the narrative on screen, you controlled the consensus on the street. The plot itself tracks two families, the Northern Stonemans and the Southern Camerons. The first half deals with the Civil War breaking out, showing romanticized pastoral pictures of the antebellum South alongside dramatic battle sequences. Austin Stoneman, a radical abolitionist congressman based on Thaddeus Stevens, represents Northern interference. The war destroys both families, but the real psychological payload delivers in the second act. That is where Griffith pivots from historical melodrama into straight-up ideological warfare. Part 2 plunges into Reconstruction, presenting a twisted, hyper-racist fantasy of post-war society. Newly freed black citizens, mostly played by white actors in aggressive blackface, are depicted as uncivilized, corrupt, and dangerously incompetent. They are shown drinking liquor in legislative halls, putting bare feet on desks, and passing laws to permit interracial marriage. The narrative frames Southern whites as a persecuted minority under the thumb of carpetbaggers and predatory black militia members. The emotional climax hinges on two specific predatory tropes designed to provoke visceral panic. Gus, a black soldier, pursues Flora Cameron into the woods until she jumps off a cliff to preserve her virtue. Meanwhile, Silas Lynch, the mixed-race lieutenant governor, attempts to force Elsie Stoneman into marriage. Ben Cameron forms the Ku Klux Klan to strike back. The film culminates in a heroic ride by the KKK to rescue white families, disarm black citizens, and strip freedmen of their right to vote at the ballot box. The psychological mission here was precise and deliberate. It aimed to validate the lost cause myth, justify Jim Crow segregation, and engineer white racial solidarity across Northern and Southern working-class lines. By framing the Klan as romantic vigilantes defending civilization against chaos, Griffith inverted reality. The movie turned terror into heroism. It weaponized fear, particularly sexual anxiety and racial paranoia, to make systemic oppression look like a moral necessity. Griffith pulled this off because he pioneered visual storytelling techniques that locked audiences into emotional compliance. He did not invent close-ups, cross-cutting, or panning shots, but he brought them together at scale for a 3-hour epic. When he cut rapidly between a trapped white family in a cabin and the galloping Klan coming to save them, audiences stood up and cheered. The technical innovation served the propaganda. Viewers were not critically analyzing historical facts. They were feeling adrenaline, terror, and relief engineered by frame rates and edits. This was not just pop culture operating in a vacuum. It merged directly with state power. Woodrow Wilson held a private screening of The Birth of a Nation inside the White House, the first time a feature film was ever shown there. Top cabinet officials and Supreme Court justices attended screenings. Wilson reportedly called it like writing history with lightning. Whether he intended to endorse the terrorism on screen or not, the message to the public was crystal clear. Official government sanction backed this narrative. The real-world consequences were immediate and catastrophic. The Ku Klux Klan had been dead for decades until this film brought it back to life. William Joseph Simmons held a cross burning on Stone Mountain, Georgia, directly inspired by the film's imagery, resurrecting the Klan into a multi-million-member national political force. Race riots swept American cities, lynching rates spiked, and discriminatory laws solidified across the country. A piece of popular media had reshaped domestic policy and public safety almost overnight. Hollywood took notes on everything that happened. The studio heads who built the modern entertainment ecosystem realized something crucial. Movie theaters were modern cathedrals where audiences sat in the dark, hypnotized, receiving moral instruction together. The genius of using entertainment as governance is that nobody resists it. When a state enforces rules through force, people naturally push back and question authority. But when that same message is wrapped in high-budget storytelling and relatable character arcs, the human brain drops its guard entirely. You do not analyze a movie for ideological programming while eating popcorn and rooting for the protagonist. That is the core machine strategy. It turns passive consumers into active participants in their own conditioning. Movies and media act as a cultural baseline, subtly defining what is considered normal, acceptable, or dangerous. By controlling the emotional payoff of a story, who gets rewarded, who gets punished, and who looks heroic, the entertainment machine quietly instructs the audience on how to think and feel about real-world structures without ever issuing a single official decree. During World War I, just 2 years after Griffith's film, the Creel Committee and the U.S. government drafted studio executives to pump out anti-German propaganda shorts. Decades later, the Department of Defense set up formal offices in Los Angeles to review scripts in exchange for military equipment access. Governance is not just about passing statutes or deploying police officers. Real control relies on managing perception, defining who the villain is, and establishing acceptable boundaries of thought. Hollywood functions as the soft power arm of this system, creating the cultural background noise that makes political decisions feel natural or inevitable. It all traces back to those 3 hours in 1915. Griffith proved that moving pictures could override reason, rewrite history, and mobilize millions under emotional banners. Whether it is military collaboration on blockbuster action films, subtle geopolitical framing in spy thrillers, or carefully managed social narratives across mainstream networks, the objective remains identical: manufacture public consensus before a political decision even needs to be made. Hollywood did not start as an innocent art scene that eventually got corrupted by politics. It was born as a governance mechanism from the start, proving early on that if you control what people see in the dark, you dictate how they behave in the light. Knowledge is king.